That's the one I wanted. And let me pull up the outline for tonight. Okay, so for stand up, who wants to kick us off? What did we learn yesterday?
We learned a lot yesterday.
HTML.
Yeah.
HTML. What do we use HTML for?
We use it to wrap our content, I want to say.
Yep. It is a markup language, right? That's a hypertext markup language. The ML stands for markup language. That's the way that we can take our content and mark it up in a way that we can get the browser to display it in the way that we want.
Is this going to go into terms or just doing a stand-up?
I believe let's just do stand up and then we'll go into terms review.
We went into some of the CSS.
We went into CSS. What is CSS for?
Cascading style sheet. It helps you make your site look pretty.
Yep. All it's pretty much for, right? That's how we style everything. So if we think about the HTML as a way that we can mark it up, we can then use that markup to target it using our CSS and our styling. And so we're going to start with a weather project later tonight that's going to show us the blend of how that styling works. What else from yesterday stood out?
I like the making the picture smaller. That part is small. It was like a little part of it, but like it helped a lot. It was annoying looking at that big old picture.
Yeah, so we'll definitely be using CSS to our advantage. We're going to be leaning into something called the grid system tonight to get layout working the way we want it to. But we'll dive into that in a minute. Anything else from yesterday?
Live share.
The live share, yep. So kind of two directions there, right? One, it's nice to be able to see my code and be able to see what I'm typing and have your own control over it. So that's certainly important. And then the other part of it is the live server as well, right? Understanding that all of our code exists, but in order to be able to see it, we need to be able to run that code somewhere. So the place that we run our code, at least in the front end, is in a web browser. So opening that live share, having it pop open our browser and be able to live refresh, certainly important. Jennifer, go ahead.
Hey, thanks, Max. I wondered, is that all set in terms of me being able to get back into live share?
I don't know exactly what problem you ran into yesterday. We're going to start by I'll share my screen and we'll start by like creating our files. And then I will send out a live share link for everyone and see if you can get into it. And if you can't, just let me know and we'll figure it out.
Thank you.
Anything else from yesterday that stood out? Any questions, any light bulb moments? Schneider shared the resizing the image is what I consider that light bulb moment, right? Where we get this moment of like, oh, that was, it seemed like such a small thing, but when it happened, it was like, oh, I can see how I would use this, right? Brandon, go ahead.
The importance of saving after you pretty much do anything.
Yes, that is really tough, right? Because you're like, I put in the work, it looks identical. I don't understand, like it should just work, right? And oftentimes it does work like that, but that little importance of remembering to save is very important. Schneider actually mentioned the importance of autosave. And we'll dive into that feature down the road, but it's important to remember that what you're seeing in your code is not committed into the computer's memory until you hit that save button, right? And so that's why we don't turn that feature on right out of the gate. And we'll actually do something with indentation down the road where the computer will help us indent our code in the way that is easiest to read. But indentation super important as one of those things, because just because the computer shows it right doesn't mean that us as humans can read that code easily. So that's one reason why indentation is super important. Even if the computer is trying to help us and may have it right, it's important to correct it so that we've got that flowing right. Artrell, go ahead.
Along with what everyone else is saying with the HTML, the syntax structure. You know, the importance of the spacing and your equals and your quotations and your the properties and the value. I forget what this C stands for. But the properties and values, like all of that together, just having it formatted and the shortcuts to use, you know, like I thought that was pretty cool and pretty important, obviously.
Absolutely. And so we're going to keep building on that tonight. That syntax is a little tricky, but once you get that down, get used to it, because we exposed you just a tiny bit to CSS syntax. Believe it or not, we expose you to the vast majority of syntax in HTML. So the next 3 or 4 weeks is just continuing to use that HTML, getting the practice at that syntax, and also with the CSS, getting practice of that syntax, getting into the swing of it. And right when you're feeling comfortable and feel like you're understanding it, we switch you over to JavaScript, which is an entirely another set of syntax for you guys to learn. The good news, though, is once you get that syntax down, we move on to React, and React syntax is kind of a hybrid between HTML and JavaScript. A lot of the syntax is shared between the two of those, and then that's it. And the projects from there on out is all about using that syntax correctly. So syntax is something where, you know, in English, if you forget a comma, it's no big deal. That's considered syntax in English. It's not proper grammar, but you know, if you're sending an email to someone and you forgot a comma, chances are the person isn't you know, going to not be able to understand that email or that letter. In programming, obviously that comma is very important, or that bracket is very important, because the way the computer reads your code is not by reading the entire line, it's by reading letter by letter. And so over time, you'll get better at understanding, hey, if something's showing up in my browser that was supposed to be styling or targeting some content, maybe I've got a syntax error right before that or right after that, which is causing the issue to happen. Kalai.
Do you mind just going over the CSS, creating the CSS page and adding into that, because I think I lost it. I tried after the class yesterday. I think I couldn't figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah, not a problem. We're going to start a new file tonight, and that new file is going to link to an external style sheet. So I will be going over that in class content anyway. If you're still struggling with it getting working once we hit that point during class tonight, definitely raise your hand, interrupt me, and we can go through that until you grab it. Anything else from yesterday?
Yeah, to add on to what she was saying, just the CSS being linked in a separate page. That was good. Helps keep things organized.
Yes, definitely helps keep things organized. And I know we only very briefly touched on selectors. We will get more practice of that tonight. With all of that said, before we dive into the content from yesterday, I know we ran out of time on the week 2, day 2 outline on terms. So I've got some terms listed out here that I want to just run over as a quick review. Before I do that, looking at this terms list, are there any terms from yesterday that you want to define together as a class that is not already on this list? And I can blow this up a little bit too. Brandon, go ahead.
So just to be clear, UL was what list again? It was something list?
An unordered list.
Unordered list.
When we do an unordered list, that is basically a bullet point.
And then yeah, OL was ordered list, and then what was LI?
Ordered list is
was
going
just
to
a
be
list.
numbered. And then the LI is a list item. So shared by both UL and LI lisps. I'm sorry, UL and OL lisps. So basically, that is the item that shows up in either an OL or a UL. So, oh, okay, camera just completely lost color. That's just great. Okay, give me a second. Let me go turn on my light. The sun is hitting my camera in such a way that I am apparently lost all color. Sun seems to be the natural enemy of all developers. Okay, there we go. So basically, what controls what the browser is going to show before the list item is what the list item is wrapped in. So if the list item is surrounded by an OL tag, everything's going to show up as a numbered list, and the numbers are going to automatically increment as we move down that list. If we do a UL, which is probably a little bit more common, that UL is going to be an unordered list, obviously the opposite of an ordered list. An unordered list just show those bullet points before the item in the list item. Any other terms that are not on this list? Otherwise, we'll just run through these quickly as a review.
Can you add syntax?
Sure. Anything else?
Do you want to add UI, UX?
Sure. I'm going to add them as two separate ones. Anything else?
Element as well, since
Sure.
you know, can't really have one or the other.
Anything else?
Could you specify opening and closing for the tag?
Anything else?
That some tags don't need closing, they're self-closing, like break or
Anything else? Okay, so let's run through these really quickly. So HTML, markup language used for getting our content and rudimentary formatting into the browser. Stands for hypertext markup language. Anything else on that HTML definition that we should try and capture? Okay, move on.
Quick question.
Yeah, go for it.
Down the line, are we going to learn about XML?
We are not. XML is a format that was very similar to HTML, but was specifically designed for structuring data, basically. XML has fallen out of favor about 5 to 10 years ago. And now the predominant data format that is used in its place is considered JSON, which is JavaScript object notation. That is certainly something that we will be learning further down the line once we get into APIs and JavaScript itself. So we won't be getting into XML a ton, only because it's very infrequently used anymore. But JSON is what's taken its place, and we definitely will be diving into it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, CSS, cascading style sheet. Used for applying styling to our HTML content. Can be used for layout, coloring, spacing, etc. Feeling good about that? Okay, an HTML tag or an element is a predefined trying to not use the predefined syntax encapsulating our content in order to define what structure the content should show. I feel like that is a terrible definition. Does anyone want to take a stab at a better one?
Yeah, I was just thinking syntax that tells our content what structure it should be.
Much better. Does anyone want to add on that? Okay, then we can move on. A self-closing tag, and it looks like we've got a couple duplicates here, but that's okay. A self-closing tag is a tag, HTML tag that does not have any content in it, and therefore does not need a matching closing tag because it closes itself using the /arrow at the end of it. So in other words, we have most of our tags have opening tags and closing tags, right? We open the P tag, then we put our content inside the P tag, and then we close our P tag. A self-closing tag just means that we open up our IMG tag, we put in whatever attributes and what any other information we need inside of that tag. And then instead of putting another closing IMG tag, we just put a slash at the end of the opening tag, and that tag serves as both the opening and the closing tag, therefore is called the self-closing tag. Anyone want to take a stab at an HTML attribute?
I'll give it a go.
Sure.
All right. I forgot the correct terminology, but basically the less than symbol and then the letter A and then a greater than symbol.
So the attribute is a little bit off of that. So this is additional information for the HTML tag in order to modify its use. For example, we can say src equals img.jpg, or href equals something. So that an HTML attribute includes both a key or name and value. Right, so whatever's on the left side of the equals is going to be the key or the attribute name, and then the value, or what's on the right side of it, that's normally in quotes, that's going to be the value. So we provide that additional information, and different HTML elements or tags can use different attribute values with them. So for example, most HTML attributes, most HTML tags will be able to take a style tag if you want to apply additional styling onto that element. An A tag always takes an href because we need to say, hey, where would we like to send this anchor? Where are we sending this link? So basically any information that comes between the closing arrow and the rest of the content that goes inside of that tag is considered an attribute.
In Studio Code, I don't know if other coders do this, but like the attributes are highlighted in this turquoise blue color, and the elements like the head body are just like this darker blue color. So that helps it, stand out so you know what you're doing.
Absolutely. Yep. That's called syntax highlighting. And those little tricks are something that your brain will pick up on over time. And when it's not that color, without you even realizing you understanding what those colors mean, you'll pick up on, wait, that's supposed to be a different color. Why isn't it? And that helps you debug your syntax errors over time. CSS property. We were just briefly exposed to one of these. Does anyone have an example of what a CSS property is?
That's when you like get an element, put the curly brace, and then like input in that, or is that something else?
So you're thinking, I think, of the selector, which is coming next.
Okay, so I
Once
don't know.
we have our selector, it is a predefined list of styles of elements we can style. So for
Like font?
example, we used color, font
Mhm.
family. We could get into
Background.
border, background, etc. Basically, what comes before the colon so that's all of the properties, right? That's all of the things that CSS can say, oh, I can style that. So the flip side of that, and I don't know why I have them in this order. Let me move this around. The flip side of that is the value. So comes after the colon, applies the styling we choose to the property that precedes it. So e.g. Color purple. Color is the property, purple is the value. Right, so that's really what it boils down to. This is the property of the CSS that we're targeting, and then the value is what we're ultimately setting it to or changing it to. And then up here, the CSS selector, these three kind of pull all of the CSS together. It determines what the following CSS is going to apply to. Selects elements from our HTML.
So,
Yep.
I'm sorry.
No, go for it.
I know that in, I believe, yeah, it was the Monday's class, you had an example on Monday's outline of a structure, of a HTML structure, and is there, can you give us like an example, like a visual? I'm a visual learner, like you can throw words at me and I'm gonna be like, huh?
Yeah, so if you scroll down a little bit in week 2, day 2, I moved those things over because this is kind of where we applied it. So
Right.
if you look at this, you've got this selector, which is what comes before the curly brace.
Okay.
Then you've got the property itself. Hey, what are we
Okay.
trying to change?
Mhm.
And then the value is what are we trying to change it to?
Okay, so the property, so the property is what are we trying to change, and then the value is what are we trying to change to?
The selector is then taking those properties and values and saying, what are we selecting to change?
To change.
So
Thank you.
think about it almost as if we're over in Figma, right? And we're like, okay, we want to adjust the font color to blue. Well, what's going to be changed to blue? Whatever we have highlighted or selected. And so that's
Okay.
kind of the equivalent in the code world. The
Mhm.
property is what over on that right toolbar are we changing? The value
Mhm.
is what are we changing that to? We're changing it to blue. And then, okay, what are we selecting to change there? That's whatever's highlighted.
Okay. Makes sense. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, we're gonna keep going here. Syntax is the grammar of code. Specific symbols in an order that the computer can understand to parse out in our design. Right, so it's if you want to think about the grammar of it all, that's really all syntax boils down to. Every language has its own syntax, and that's true in the real world as well, right? Even in English, well, there are different variations of English syntax. We use the $sign here, but in the UK they use the £sign. That is considered syntax, right? In different parts of the world, they use a comma to separate out the whole numbers from the decimal numbers, right? That is considered syntax. Using some syntax can even boil down to, do we read the language from left to right, or do we read it from right to left, right? So all of that is considered syntax. It's basically all of the additional symbols outside of the letters themselves that support the language. And that is true both in spoken or written languages and in computer programming languages. So the fact that we put those arrows around the H1 tag, we're telling the computer, hey, we don't actually want the letter H and the number 1 to show up here. We're using that to mark up our code so that you can understand it. So that's all that goes into the syntax, is basically what are all of the symbols that the computer can understand and back its way out of. So we can go through these really quickly. UI stands for user interface. It is the design the user interacts with, often planned out before the coding phase, right? So UI, we always have to code out in order for the user to be able to interact with it, but that doesn't mean we need to start with the code, right? So oftentimes we use tools like Figma or Sketch or Photoshop or any of those to plan out what our user interface is going to look like. And then UX is the broader parent of UI. Any user experience that the user has is encompassed here. So for example, we may design our UI, but then realize that the UI is hard to interact with because the user is using a mouse and not a trackpad. So they can't scroll horizontally, right, on a traditional mouse like you can on a trackpad. So that kind of encompasses the user experience. If we go back to the car example, turning on your turn signal is not really part of the UI, but part of the UX is when you turn that turn signal on, does the turn signal stalk stay down? When you turn it on, does that trigger something as part of the UI that shows that the turn signal is on? Is there a sound that comes with the turn signal to remind the user that it's on? That is all part of the user experience, right? And so depending on how the user is interacting with our user interface, that may or may not be encapsulated into our user experience. Okay, HTML element. I kind of have that up here. An HTML tag is basically the structure of our HTML element. The HTML element includes both the tag, attributes, and the content inside of the tag. So the HTML element is kind of that whole thing, right? The opening tag, any attributes that are in the opening tag, the content that comes between the opening tag and the closing tag, and the closing tag itself. All of that together comes together to be an HTML element. The tag itself is the opening and closing structure of an HTML element. Uses the opening and less than and greater than signs as syntax to tell the browser the structure of how the content should show. Then for the opening tag, we can say, for example, a p tag includes the opening arrow, the closing other arrow, and the element name itself. Can include attributes about that element. Closing tag also includes and the element name, but the opening arrow is followed by a slash to tell the browser this tag matches the opening tag to bring the content to an end, right? So basically we use that closing tag to say, hey, we're starting a p tag here, but we've got to tell the browser that we're done with this p tag. Any of the content that's in here is done. We want to wrap that up and make sure that the browser doesn't think that whatever is coming next is all part of that one same p tag. So that's why we really have to have those closing tags, is we're telling the computer, hey, we're done with whatever is opening up at the beginning. And then the closing tag is an opening tag that has all the required information in it. So it doesn't require a closing tag or any content inside of it. So if we think of that image tag, right? For an image, all we need to do is provide the information of where the image is. We don't have any content coming inside of that image. We just want the image to show up. So because we don't have any content, we don't need to tell the browser that there's also a closing tag with it. So what we end up doing is we open our tag here and we provide any information we need, but we don't have any content coming after that. So because of that, we just close the tag as well by putting that slash in there. That serves as both an opening tag and a closing tag, and is considered a self-closing tag. Any other things that popped up while we were going through those that you would like to capture in terms? Or any of them that you want to add to the definition, or don't agree with the definition, or don't understand the definition?
Yeah, Max, I just wanted to add something, if that's fine.
Yeah.
And you can give your opinion on it as well. I know like there's a lot of these terms here and it could feel a little overwhelming. As we go through the course, I'm sure a lot of us are going to learn, like, get better at our Googling skills and just kind of Googling something that we might have learned or remembered at some point. It's really helpful. But for anybody that's like just starting out on Google, like one thing that's two sites that have helped me really a lot regarding terms is W3 Schools and MDN Docs. And I think MDN stands for Mozilla Developer Network. And specifically those two are really good at like explaining stuff like elements and like how to use the tags in a very like basic way. At least it's because some sites can get a little overwhelming and start throwing it in with a bunch of explanations, but those two resources, if you see those pop up when you search for a term, like in my experience, those are some of the best at breaking things down.
Absolutely. And if you look at the week 2, day 1 outline, I have them linked somewhere. Where did I end up moving those to?
Max, they're in the pre-reading.
Ah, thank you. Thank you for restoring my sanity. So if you head to the week 2 pre-readings, you may say like, hey, how do I know what like all of these different HTML elements are? Or like, hey, you're throwing out H1s and P tags, and how do I know what all of those are? So if you head to like W3 Schools, over here on the left, it's going to give you a breakdown of everything that's in HTML. And if you go up to the top and head over to CSS, the same things are going to be in here. So one of the things that we're going to touch on in just a couple minutes is actually this box model. And CSS, W3 Schools can be really helpful in not only knowing the art of what's possible, but also going back in and reviewing the definitions of these and sometimes getting visuals on them as well, right? So one of the things that we touched on yesterday was like colors, right? And I was pulling purple and magenta and all of that. And you're like, well, how do I know what colors I can type in here? Well, this is going to give you a breakdown of all the CSS color names. It's going to show you, hey, this style tag, we reviewed this yesterday. This is how you can not only use color, but background color in order to change something going on in the background there. And then if you keep going down, they show you all the different places and the different formats that you can use to apply color. W3 Schools is a great resource, both as a, hey, let me go through and learn these things individually, but also as a quick reference guide. So there are some things in here where I'm like, I can never remember what all the things a link tag needs, right, in order to get CSS working. And so you can come over here to HTML CSS and get some information about inline CSS. Hey, we covered that yesterday. And then go down and see internal CSS. Oh, look, we covered that yesterday as well with the style tags. And if you keep going down, you can see it covers external CSS and gives you all of this information in here. So if you're someone who learns from combining the example with the definition, W3 Schools is certainly helpful for that. And if you notice right at the top, it covers HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And we are going to get into Bootstrap a little bit later. So W3 Schools is an awesome resource to rely on. If you want to think about this as the textbook for the course, this is a great reference, and thank you for calling that out.
Yeah, and there are places where you can practice. It'll show you an example of what to do, and then you can go do it in a different browser and practice that. So that's really helpful. And then it quizzes you at the end of that practice session.
Yeah, so if you're in any one of their examples, you can click this try it yourself button, and you can see that they've got like the background color of the body tag, right? The entire, everything that all the code is in. And you can actually come in here and change that live. So you can be like, oh, I wonder what it looks like when I change it to red. So if you type in red and hit the little run button, you'll see the entire background of the page changes to red. So great way to reference kind of the art of what's possible. Brandon, go ahead.
Sorry, my mic was
Okay.
acting up. So this might be a bit of a can of worms type question, but this just made me realize that I've had this question. So for example, if there was a color or like like you have like a customer that like were to request a very like specific shade of something, and they're like, all right, this exact thing, but it's not in the HTML like tags. Is there like a way to like kind of add on, or would you be using a different like language for that or something like that?
Yeah, so
Does that make sense?
Yeah, the most common way to use color values is this hex code right here. So hex code is, if we think about decimals, everything ranges from 1 to 9, or I'm sorry, from 0 to 9. In hex languages, it goes from 0 to 9 and then A through F. So it just gives you a little bit more flexibility on that. So the way the hex codes are breaking down is that it's the red color value at the beginning. So if something is a very light color red, it's going to be 0, 0. 0, 0 is actually absolutely no red. And then all the way up to FF is going to be the most amount of red that you get out of it. The same for green, which is the middle two values, and then blue is the last two values, right? And so between red, green, and blue, if you go all the way back to kindergarten, you can make any color out of the red, greens, and blues out there. So if we, let me see if I can do a quick example of that. So in this background color, we're dealing with this right here, right? So if we wanted something to be all red, we could say FF0000, and we should get pure red there. Now, if we wanted pure green, we would change this to 00 and this to FF, and we would get pure green. And then the same for the blue, right? If we wanted pure blue, we would go there. Now, if we said, hey, what happens if we mix blue and red? So we can change these two values and hit run, and we get pink because red and blue mixed gives us pink.
That's so cool.
And then if you went, okay, well, what happens if we take 100% red and only roughly 50% blue? So we can change this FF to a 50 and hit run. And believe it or not, there's actually a little bit of blue in that color, right? And so we can actually play around with these values and get something in between those colors. Now, obviously, as a developer, we don't want to just keep on fiddling with the numbers in order to get the right color, right? So if you do a search for a hex color picker, Google actually has it built right into their search tool. So what you can do is change this color slider here and be like, I'm looking for a very specific yellow. And you can slide it around here and go, oh, that's like a mustard brown yellow, right? You can see that that hex code comes out to that. And then here are the other color encoding systems, some of which CSS supports in order to get that value working. There is also a color picker built into VS Code. So whenever you type in a color, whether it's the word purple or whether you do a # and then the hex code out, you can actually click on the little rectangle and that will pull up a color picker and will let you slide things around as well.
Thank
Do you mind if you could share that with us later in VS Code? Just that.
Yeah, if you're, let me see, because I think I've got something styled in here. So we've got the color magenta here. But if we're like, whoa, that is way too pink for me, I want something a little different. If you hover over this little square, it pulls open the color picker. And then from here, you can be like, just kidding, I actually wanted something a little bit more blue. And so now that you've picked that blue, this color picker doesn't use the hex system. It uses the RGB. RGB, same exact idea, right? 0 to 255 or the values here. So 197 is the blue value. That's obviously the highest, but we have 24 out of 255% blue. I'm sorry, red, and 53 out of 255% green. And all of that comes together to give us that blue color there.
That's interesting. Okay, thank you.
That's so cool.
Schneider, go ahead.
What does CSS not support in terms of like the culling systems?
So you can only ever use 0 through 255 of red, green, and blue colors. And then CSS also supports RGBA. Does anyone want to guess at what the A stands for? A stands for alpha. So how transparent is that color supposed to be? So if I want to be able to see through that color and see maybe the content behind that color, we can use RGBA to support the percentage of transparency from 0 to 1. You're like, well, 0 to 1, that doesn't give us much of a range. The A number, that alpha number, the thing controlling the transparency, is given in a decimal number. So if you wanted that to be 50% transparent, you put in 0.5, and that's how you get to that transparency level. With that said, the computer in front of you can support more than 0 to 255 of all of the different colors in the rainbow. And so you do run into some situations where RGB isn't enough to get that exact color that you're looking for. But most oftentimes when you see color expressed in CSS, it's going to be in that hex code, because that hex code was the first color list that CSS supported. Any other questions?
Can you show us, it has to do with what Brian said earlier regarding the resources, how, that in VS Code, how, what's it called? The MNDN is built in if you like hover over an element.
Yeah, so if we're here and we leave our mouse over it, you're going to see a little definition that pops up, right? And it says the li element represents a list item, blah, 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 blah. If you want more information about that, you can actually move your mouse up to this. I thought you could move your mouse up to that. Okay, there's got to be a trick.
You just gotta go slow. It works for me.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So just go very slow on your mouse. You can click on this MDM reference and it says, are you sure you want to open this? If you click open, it will bring it up there. And similar to W3 schools, we'll give you like a little demo environment where it will show you what the output of that code is. And then over on the left, you'll notice there are a ton of other HTML elements in here that you can learn more about. So if you're ever like, ooh, what's that UL? I use the UL, but I forget what the code is that goes inside of it. You could type the UL, you could hover over it, click on the MDM reference, and it would give you more information about what the element is, and then give you a hint as to how you use it with the li tags. Okay, last call for questions. Okay, so tonight we are going to do a little bit more with CSS. We're going to play around with the box model and understand how we can get items to move around the page to give us a little bit more spacing, as well as the border. And we're going to save a couple of these for you guys to play around with if you would like. We already did font family. And I think we touched on text decoration already. So just move these here. These three we will save for later. Then we're going to get started on our first grid project. So we're going to start working with, if you think about a table, right, or a spreadsheet, we've got our rows and we've got our columns. Turns out that that's one of the best ways to lay out our website in order to get content positioned where we want. So we're going to do a little sandbox in our grid project, and then we will move on to our first actual real website, right? Something that you can like print out and put on your fridge for your kids to see, or take it home to your parents and be like, look, Mom, I built my first website. Whatever it is, we're going to build this weather app. Later on in the program, we're actually going to make that dynamic, and we're going to make it support multiple cities and actually pull in real-time weather data. But for now, we're just going to play around with getting our practice with our HTML and just a touch of CSS there and use our grid system throughout that. With all of that said, we've got to dive into our project setup for the day. So what we're going to do, oh, and there are 2 messages in chat, sorry. Yes, my camera likes to send me to the shadow realm whenever there is a color. Okay, so we're going to go into Finder. And that should pop up a new window that looks like this. We're going to move over to our desktop. We're going to open up our C4 My Code folder. And I personally don't like this got to click into everything, right? So I'm going to move up to the top here to this icon and change it to list. This is just, I'm sorry, change it to columns. This is just a personal preference. If you're comfortable with icons, you can leave it in that mode. I like it so that when I open up the W2 folder, I can know that I'm still in my code in my W2, and now I'm in this area in here. Excuse me. Now that I'm in my W2 folder, D2 is where we were at yesterday. I want to make a new folder for day 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and go to new folder, Right click again, 2-finger tap on the trackpad will pull open the right click menu. Or if you prefer, you can hold and click and left click like normal. That is the equivalent of a right click. From there, we are going to type in D3 and hit enter. That creates our day 3 folder. From there, we can take our day 3 folder and drag it down to the dock into our VS Code icon. And as soon as we let go of that D3 folder, it's going to open D3 for us right in VS Code. That's a little shortcut. If that is feeling a little overwhelming for you, the other way you can accomplish this is open up VS Code like normal by just clicking on it, go up to File at the top and go down to Open Folder. We're going to go to Desktop, to our C4 My Code, to our week 2. If you don't have your day 3 folder created yet, you can hit New Folder and type in D3 and hit Enter. Then we're going to single click on our D3 and hit open. And that is another way to get our VS Code open to the code that we want. Artrell, go ahead.
Yeah, I was trying to follow you, what you were doing with changing it from an icon to like a list. And then I took my eyes off the screen for like 4 seconds and I got lost.
Yeah, so up here is the icon that you can click on to change from icon view into column view.
All right, hold on. Okay, so column. Okay, so now I'm in column view. All right, so go back to my W2 folder and create a new one.
Yes, inside your W2 folder, you're going to create a new one for day 3.
All right. Is it new folder with just new folder? Just new folder?
New folder. Yep. If you right click, you can get to new folder there.
Okay. And that's going to be D3.
Yep. And then you're going to take that D3 folder and drag it to the VS Code icon in your dock and let go.
Okay, did that.
And now you're all caught up.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is before we even create the first file, I want to make sure that you guys can follow along with me, right? So whenever you see me clicking on this live share icon, you don't have to follow along with this. This is just the steps that I take to make sure that you guys can get into my code. So if you want to follow along with my code, which is totally optional, I just pasted that live share link into the Slack chat. Hopefully it is a little bit easier for you to get into that. What you can do is instead of clicking on the link, which is what we did yesterday, now that you've got live share installed, you can go to File, New Window up here at the top. You can then go over to your live share icon right here. And instead of clicking on either of these 2 links, if you come down and hit the join button, last night's link may show up there. We don't want last night's link. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in from Slack. We're going to get today's link, which I just sent at 6:30. You're going to right click on that and hit copy link. And then come over to the VS Code over here and paste that link in. Make sure the link ends in 0FD5. That means you've got the right link. And if you hit enter on that, that's going to pull up my workspace. Now, I don't have any files in here, so you can't see anything in it yet. But this is my copy of the code that you can follow along with. So I'm just going to...
How do we do that again?
Yep. Let me go through that again. So in VS Code, when you've got your D3 folder open, you're going to go up to the top, File, New Window. That's going to make sure that my code doesn't overwrite whatever code you have open. You're going to go to the live share button down here at the bottom and go into the join button here. Once you're in there, you're going to switch over to Slack, right click in the live stream channel on copy. right click on the link and hit copy. Then head back over to your VS Code. Delete out whatever code is in there already, whatever link is in there already, and hit Command V to paste it. And then finally, you can just hit that enter button in there. And that will pop open my live share workspace and it will show you D3 over here. And now you should have two windows open, your D3, which is your own code, and then the workspace over here with my code inside of it. Well, what will be my code.
So Max, it's asking me, it's saying I have to sign in and select an account. I have to select GitHub and sign into that, or Microsoft.
You can sign in with GitHub and that should let you get through. So it's gonna like pop open a new browser window and have you sign into GitHub. And then when you're done with that flow, you'll come back into VS Code.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Hi, sorry. I don't know where I went wrong. So I went to live share.
Yep.
Give me 1 second, because you said new windows.
Yep.
And then
Okay.
live share.
Yep.
And then join.
Yep.
Okay, continue as anonymous.
Continue as anonymous is fine. Yep.
And then I put my name in, and then it doesn't show up.
Okay, go ahead and share your screen. Okay, up at the top, it says enter the URL.
So I just copy the code from Slack.
From Slack, yes.
Okay, give me 1 second.
If it's easier, you can just right click on the link and that will give you an option to copy it.
Okay.
And then go ahead and hit enter on there and you're good to go. You're in.
Okay, cool.
Okay, let's do a quick poll. You should have hopefully two windows open at this point. One, which is your week 2, day 3 folder, and one, which is a separate window. Oh, I launched the wrong one. I'll fix that later.
Oh.
If anyone needs help, just raise your hand and we can get you help. Okay, who's lost? Who needs help?
Well, Max, it's not letting me sign in and now it's just giving me issues. Do I have to look at that second window with you or can I just follow
share-
along like you did last night?
You can, but I'd rather get this fixed for you. So just go ahead and share your screen and let's take a look.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna request remote control if you don't mind.
Go for it.
And you should have allow on one of your two monitors.
Mhm.
Okay, perfect. Go ahead, open system preferences. Click on the lock in the bottom left, put your finger on the sensor, and then check off Zoom for me. Okay, and now I am good to go and I can take remote control. So I'm going to open your VS Code here. And can you drag that over to the other window for me? The other monitor?
Oh. Which window? I've got like 3 windows open.
The VS Code one.
Yeah.
There you go. Perfect, thank you. Okay,
Yep.
so I'm gonna say the live share, I'm gonna say join. Down here at the bottom, this continue as anonymous is completely fine because you're not getting edit access to the code. So you can totally hit continue as anonymous here. You're gonna hit enter for your name, and then we're just gonna make sure that this is the link from today's class, which it is. So I hit enter on that, and that's gonna pop open my code and you're all set and good to go.
Gosh. Okay. Thank you.
So that continue as anonymous button is totally fine to do that instead of signing in. just because you guys aren't going to be editing the code.
Okay.
Or Charles, go ahead.
All right. I tried following the steps. I am an anonymous, but I'm trying to figure out where to paste in the link.
Go ahead, share your screen.
Okay. Share. Desktop 2. Share. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes. So you're already in.
Oh.
That window is my code. So you see
Right
down
here?
at the yep. You see down at the bottom where it says joined right here.
Yes.
That means you are coupled with my code. You're in to go. You're good to go.
Okay. Oh, I have to see right here. It says restricted mode. Okay.
Yep.
Mine
Okay.
doesn't say that. What am I doing wrong? I'm so sorry.
Share your screen. Are you in the right window?
I kept the window that you said it was right, so I don't know if I'm.
Okay, so this is in the browser. We don't want to use VS Code in the browser. So if you go ahead and close that tab or that window, either one is fine. So this is one of them. Swipe up with 3 fingers. Do you have any other windows open?
Nope.
Okay, so from here, you're going to go to the new window. You're going to go to live share over on the, yep. Then, okay, enter. And enter. And okay, so now you've got joined read only down at the bottom.
Let me move that over. Yep.
So, yep. So you're good to go now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm still learning names. Could you say your name for me? Who has your hand raised?
Mute, unmute, and I go by Tika.
Tika. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have J3 on here, but I
Okay.
guess I don't see, and what I've been seeing as I'm trying to watch everybody else, everybody has a join button, but
Yeah,
I
so
don't have that.
share your screen.
Let's see, how do I share desktop? I can share desktop 1, which has those on there. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay.
So you don't have the extensions installed that we installed yesterday.
Oops, sorry. Okay.
And because of that, or maybe we did it on Monday, I can't remember. But that's why you're seeing a slightly different Zoom screen. So if I request remote control,
Okay.
and you hit allow on that,
Okay.
and then hit open system preferences, hit the lock in the bottom left. Put your finger on the sensor or hit use password, either is fine. And then check off Zoom US for me. Over on the right, about, yep, perfect. And now I can come in and have remote control here. So I'm going to install 2 extensions for you that we're going to need. One of which is the live share extension. And the other is the live server extension. So now that we get both of those installed,
Okay.
you'll see that you've got this option here
Right.
now.
Okay.
And now you can go through and join and go through the steps.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. All right, we good to go?
I have a quick question. Can you
Yeah.
check whether I am joined the live share, because I'm not sure. It seems like I joined, but I don't know, see the same video, same image like others.
Down at the bottom,
Um,
you should see like a little group of people and then the number 16 next to it. And it should say joined read only.
No.
Okay, share your screen. Let's take a look. Can you share your screen for us? Okay, so we don't ever want to be using VS Code in the browser. We always want to be using the downloaded desktop app. So what we're going to do is I'm going to request remote control. Okay, so from here, I'm going to close this out. Maybe. Do you have something that says open system preferences on your screen? You there? You are muted. Okay.
Can you
let
hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So do you have something that says open system preferences?
I did everything. I did
Okay.
unlocked it. So.
Did you check off Zoom US?
Yes. That's fine. Yeah. Can you put me with TA so I can go to TA and come back? That's fine.
Sure. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Let me put you in a breakout room. Ariel, are you available for breakouts? Okay. Let me get you guys in there. Okay. You should just get a pop-up to go into the breakout room. Karen, go ahead.
Okay, I just.
Sorry, real quick, Max.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got kicked out. I joined it and got kicked.
Just try and rejoin it or go to breakout rooms down at the bottom and join.
Yeah, I only have the option to close all rooms.
Right above it, if you scroll down to the bottom of the list, it should say room 1 and join.
Yeah, it says, okay, all right, thanks.
Karen, go ahead.
Yes, I'm very lost. But the thing is, I have you on Zoom on my personal laptop, but I'm working with a MacBook. So if I share my screen, it won't be to my MacBook. Do I have to be connected to my MacBook in order for, okay, all right, let me hang tight. Let me just, when I come back, I might have to be put into the corner with Ariel. I might have to be put in timeout with the dunce hat.
We can't hear you, Max.
Thank you. Anyone else have questions? Literally at Ariel's graduation, she bought me a mug that says "You're on mute" because there's so many times that she said it to me that I had to. Any other questions? Okay, so let's get into the fun of it. Now we get to get our code going, right? So I'm switching over to the window that has your own code in it, right? Not my code that you're referencing. You're back in your code. We're going to create a new file up here, and we're going to call it grid.html. So new file icon is up here at the top. And then we're going to click that button. It's going to show us a text box. We're going to type in grid.html, hit enter. And then we're going to get our practice typing out our HTML tags again, right? So we're going to start with our HTML. That's going to be our shift comma, the letters HTML, our shift period for our closing tag. Then we're going to hit enter, and that's going to get our line spacing going. Then all HTML pages need 2 additional structure tags. They need a head tag, and in that head, we can put something like a title. And that title can be grid page. Then I'm going to use my cursor to go at the end of the headline. And we're going to take a break after all of this. So don't panic if I'm going a little fast. You'll have a chance to catch up. I'm going to do a new tag called body. And in my body, I'm going to do hello world. Now, the reason we do hello world is we can't know any of this stuff is working unless we get all of this typed out. Now, we can't see if any of this is working in the first place unless we go into our go live. So I'm going to go down to the bottom here and click on go live. And that's going to pop open my browser and show me my hello world. So I'm going to stop here. I'm going to relaunch the poll. If you are still working on it, do not feel rushed. Take your time. Get all of your HTML to look like this over on the left. Then go down to the bottom to your go live button and click on go live. And then over in the right, you should have it say hello world. If you guys ignore that I'm lost option, whenever you're tempted to click on I'm lost, raise your hand instead, because we don't know who's voted I'm lost, so I can't help you get unlost. So don't vote I'm lost for me, just raise your hand if you need help. Jennifer, go ahead.
Thanks. I tried opening this file, and then it tells me that a local folder wasn't supported. So right now I closed out and I'm trying to go back into VS
Okay.
Code.
Make sure that you're in your day 3 window and not in mine, because if you're in mine, it's going to give you all kinds of errors and say you're in read-only mode. You can't do that.
Yeah. Okay.
If you want to share your screen, I can help you through it. Just let me know.
Oh, goodness. I have to, what was it? I dragged my D3 down to my VS Code.
Correct.
Let me try that. Okay, I think that did it. And now I want to be where? Creating a new file?
New file, and you're going to call it grid.html. And then hit enter on that. That should pop it open for you, and then you can start typing out the code here.
Okay, thank you.
Tika, go ahead.
I think I need to share my screen. I have my HTML code, but maybe I'm in the wrong window as I'm listening to
Go ahead and share your screen. Let's take a look.
as I'm listening to other questions.
You can share your screen. Let's see what's going on.
Okay, let's see. Here.
Okay, so we want to be careful here. Our indentation and line spacing is really important, right? So we don't want to have all those extra line breaks in there, all those extra lines. So yeah, that's definitely going to clean it up a little bit. One problem is you've got HRML instead of HTML.
Oh, I see. Maybe I should. What is it?
And the same at the bottom, because it just put that closing tag in for you. And then down in the bottom right, there's that go live button. You can go ahead and click on go live.
But then I get this because I don't even like it should have told me, hey, you have a syntax error or something like that. But I get.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the problem is there. If you go ahead and give me remote access, let's just take a look to see maybe something got opened a little weird. Okay, so the problem is you aren't in your day 3 folder, and because day 3 didn't get opened right, it's a little confused as to what files you're working on. So if you go to open folder, now you can pop open day 3, and why is that not opening? Go file, open folder. Day 3 open. Okay, that's this one here. You already have it open, and that's why it's confused. Okay, so now if we go into grid, here's your file.
Okay.
And now if we click on go live, that will pull open your page. So the
Mm,
problem was you had two windows open, but
please,
this
okay.
one is the one that day 3 was opened in. So it wouldn't let you open day 3 because you already had it open.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
No problem. Karen, go ahead.
Okay, I might need to be put in the room with Ariel because I'm so lost.
Okay, let me see, can I? Okay, you both should have the option of joining that room now. Oh,
Thank
no, I'm sorry. Well,
I see it says room 1.
okay. Kalai, you can just ignore that if it popped up on your side.
Thank you.
And okay, perfect. Anyone else? Oh, Archel, go ahead.
All right. My code looks similar to what you guys have, except I have 9 lines. I have my number 8's a space, but how do I know I need to save it, but I forget how to check it. So I'm going to share my screen.
So you're going to hit the go live button in the bottom right, and that's how it's going to pop open into the browser.
Okay, so on the bottom right, okay, I clicked on go live, start. Okay. So right now it just says hello world in black.
That's it. You're caught up.
All right, now I gotta remember this. I don't have that little white dot for me to save it.
So that
No,
means
no,
it's
no.
already saved.
Okay, I never did command F. Okay, awesome.
All right. Any other questions? Okay.
I have one
Oh.
quick, I'm sorry, I have one
Yeah.
quick question. You had your screen where you had your code and then your output on the side.
Yep.
How did you get them all on? Like right now I have my code in one screen and then yeah.
So what I did is I grabbed the window up here at the top and I drag it over to the left side of the screen, kind of towards the center, and that's what snaps it over onto the left side. And then I grab this window with my output in it, my browser, and I drag that over onto the right side of the screen and let go, and that's what snaps it left and right.
So you're snapped into the browser?
The code is snapped to the left side in VS Code, and then the browser is snapped to the right side.
Because on yours, it says Chrome at the top where the little apple is.
Well, whatever application is where whatever
Oh, I see
window
code
is
now.
active is what
Okay.
shows up at the top. So if I'm in Chrome, it's going to show Chrome up here, and if I click on the code window, it's going to show me code up at the top.
Okay, so I got it. Thank you.
Cool. Anyone else? Okay. So we've talked a little bit very briefly about this box model. The box model is how we can get elements kind of apart from each other, but sometimes it's helpful to be able to see where that box actually shows up. So in order to do that, we're going to put a p tag in here. Actually, we're going to use I take it back. We're going to use a div. A div is by far the most widely used HTML element. A div, anyone want to guess what it stands for?
Divider?
Division. Close to divider. It is a way to just divide out your it is a chance to divide out your code. So it is basically putting your code in a little box, and then you can separate it out from there. So I've probably created hundreds of thousands of divs in my lifetime, and I learned last cohort what div stands for. So div is just a way to break out your code into different sections, into different elements, so you can position them or move them around. So I'm going to take my hello world and put it inside my div. Now, divs by default are invisible, right? You can see what's inside the div, but none of our code changed over here, right? And we can do another div and say, let's say more content in here. And as soon as I save, you're going to see more content shows up over here. Okay, that's great, but we can't really see where our divs really are. So in order to do that, we're going to start putting some styling onto our divs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to my head tag and put a style in here. In that style, I can target all of my divs and use a CSS. Again, this is my selector up here, my CSS selector. And in my CSS, I can put a property in there. Let's say border. And then we've got to tell the border what the border should look like. So let's say we're going to make it 2px. That's going to be the width of the border. We're going to make it a solid border because we can actually do dashed lines and stuff like that. And then we're going to say blue. And so as soon as I hit save on there, look at what shows up over in my browser. We've got our borders showing up on both of our divs. I'm going to do one more thing before break, and then we can go on break. The problem is I've got a blue border on both of my divs. I would like a red border on my first div and a blue border on my second div. Well, we use this selector up here, but how do we get it so that we can write two separate ones and have it apply? In order to do that, we need to use a class. That class is going to give us something easier for us to select in our CSS. So I'm going to do a class on my first div, and I'm going to call that a red. And then I'm going to go down to my div down here and say class is blue. Okay, well, nothing turned red or red over here. Well, I've got to modify my selectors in order for this red and blue to apply. So I'm going to come back up here and I'm going to say red. The problem is that whenever we use a selector, we've got to tell it what we're trying to select. If we're selecting an HTML element, we can just put the name of the element up here. But we're not selecting an element in this case. We're selecting this class in here. So what a class matches to is a period in front of the class name. So if I go ahead and save that, my blue shows up. Okay, well, that was dumb of me. I put blue in here. Let's put red in there and hit save. Now I've got my red. And now I can also say dot blue, because again, we use a period whenever we are trying to target or select a class. And then we can say our border is going to be 2px solid and blue. So we're going to pause there. Anyone needs help, just go ahead and raise your hand. If you are able to get the red and the blue working, you can go on break and be back at 7:20. If you don't have that working, stick around, try and push through it, and raise your hand if you need any help. And if you're behind and want to go into a breakout room with me, I'm also happy to do that over break to get you caught up. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Nope, I got it. I'm done.
Okay, enjoy break.
Thanks.
Max,
Yes.
could you please remind me how I'm going to open this in a browser?
Yep. I can't show you because I've got, oh, I can show you. Can I show you?
Or you could just,
The live, down in the bottom, it should say go live. Bottom right.
there it is. Thank you.
If you click on go live, then it should pop open in the browser for you.
Excellent. Okay, and yours is. Huh, I don't have a border. I just have a line above each border. I only have like the top part of the border, not the whole thing.
So check your code. Does it say border top or does it say border?
It says border.
Okay, go ahead, share your screen. Let's take a look.
Okay.
I don't know. I thought I saw a border on both. I mean, sometimes they kind of blend, so it's hard to see, but yeah, I thought I saw a border.
Okay, go to your code for me.
I'm so sorry. I was looking at the wrong screen. I'm so sorry.
You just shared your browser with me instead of the entire desktop, so I can only see what's in the browser. I can't see the code. So you need to stop your screen share and then restart it with all of desktop 1 or 2.
Okay. And how's that?
That's much better. Okay, your code is on the right. That looks right. Okay, so look at where your div class red is. Then you've got a closing tag there. That is telling the computer, hey, my div is going to show up here and it's going to be red, but I don't want anything in it. So because you don't have anything in here, it's saying, hey, this is the whole div. My div is done once it reaches all of that code. Now I'm going to put in the words hello world. We don't want that. We want the words hello world to be inside of our div right here.
Okay. Okay. Oops.
Command Z to edit undo.
No.
Command X to cut. Command V to paste.
There it goes.
And now you've got an extra div here that shouldn't be there. So you can go ahead and take that out.
Mhm.
And then the same for here. You want to move your more content inside of the div and then get rid of that div there.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Max.
And then if you go ahead and save, it's it should live update in the server for you. And you should have your borders the way it should be.
There it is. Thank you.
Yep. Basically what happened there is the browser can't draw a border around your content unless the content is inside that CSS selector, that div that you were targeting.
Okay.
Question.
Yes.
So divs are still a little confusing for me, and I've used them a ton of times. And are they just used to separate content, and like, are they best to use like when you're using CSS on another page?
Yeah, so divs are the most widely used HTML element. It literally is just to separate out content so that we can target it with our HTML. So I'm going to share the W3 page on these. It says a div tag is a division or a section in your HTML document. It's used as a container for HTML elements, which you can then style with your CSS or manipulate with JavaScript. And the way that you can target that container is by using the class or ID attribute. Any sort of content can be put into a div tag. So it's just kind of the universal, hey, I want to put my code into a container, but it's not exactly a paragraph, or it's not exactly an H1, or it's not exactly a bullet point item. What's like the generic thing that I can put it into? That's going to be a div. Tika, go ahead.
I think I figured it out. I'm not sure because everything disappeared when I minimized some windows to look at others. And oh, I still can't dock my code, my output with my code. So I
Okay,
was trying to do that.
did you install the rectangle app?
I did that a while back. I wonder
Okay.
if maybe not.
Go ahead and share your screen. Let's take a look.
Okay, let me see, share screen. There, share. Okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna request remote control.
Mhm.
Okay, so if I grab the window,
It might be underneath because I full screen because it wouldn't come up and etc. So
so where is, oh, okay, so
You
you're in full screen mode. So
Yeah,
because you're in full screen, you can't do any of the snapping.
okay.
So if you
But
come out of
I was
full
trying to do it
screen now,
before that.
now you can grab this window, drag it over to the left, and it's going to snap there. And then
Oh,
you can grab the window here, drag it over to the right, and it's going to snap there.
snaps. Okay, I was snapping to wrong places
Gotcha.
where I was snapping to. But okay, thank you.
Yep. And just be careful here. You've got a K instead of an L. And so that's going to cause issues down the road.
I'm looking to make my font bigger because on the big screen I can see it, but so I have the code and the output on the the MacBook. But I was
So
trying
in
to
VS
find-
Code, you can just hit Command plus, and it will
Okay.
blow it up a little bit for you.
Okay, thank you.
And the same goes for the browser. If you're in the browser and hit Command plus, it will zoom in a little bit for you. And if you keep hitting the plus, it will blow it up.
Okay, thank you. Because I
No
couldn't
problem.
see the little letters. All right, thanks.
Arturo, go ahead.
All right. I was having a hard time following at the same speed you were going. But I was able to emulate what you did. I saw a couple mistakes I made and I was able to correct them for it to look good. But I want to show it to you.
Sure.
To make sure that, let me lower my hand first of all. And then desktop 2. And you see, yeah, so I'm on the left, obviously.
Okay. Yeah, you're good to go. You're all caught up.
All right, now question. I'm having a hard time doing the snap also. Am I in full screen or no?
You are not. So all you need to do, I'm going to request remote control.
Okay, hold on. Okay.
Okay. So all you need to do is if you grab the window up at the top here, drag it over to the left-hand side, kind of halfway down, and then, whoa.
You went
I
to my
lost
other
that one.
screen.
So let me try it on this one. There you go. So that if you grab this top window up at the top and drag it over onto the right-hand side, hold it there for a second and let go, that's what's going to get it to snap. On the other side, it's a little trickier because your extended monitor is there. So in order to get the snapping working on the left-hand side, you just have to be a little bit more careful when you get it over to the edge. Make sure that it's got that dark rectangle shown up there. And if it does, you can let go and it will snap for you.
Okay, I got to practice that.
No problem. But you're good to go. Your code looks good, so you're all set.
All right, thank you.
Don't forget to save, and then you'll be able to see it in the browser. Talai, go ahead.
So now I can see your live share, but mine is lost.
Okay, go ahead and share your screen. Let's take a look.
I can just see this, but
Okay.
not any of my
So I
files.
think you are in full screen mode. If you give me remote control, I can take a look.
Sure.
So if we put our mouse kind of, let me
Why
see.
this gets locked every now and then? Because I've opened it once, but every time it wants me to unlock. So
I still don't have remote control of it. I think
Okay.
that when you unlock it, you also have to hit the little check mark next to Zoom US.
Okay. I did.
Okay, so let me see. Okay, now I've got control, so it should
Sure.
stop popping up system preferences. Okay, so if I put my mouse up at the top of the screen, see you're in full screen mode up here?
Yeah.
I don't like full screen mode because it's easy to get lost in it. So I don't use full screen mode. What I use instead is the snapping. So I can grab it here, and if I want to go into and have it be like the full screen, I just drag it up to the top and let go, and that's what brings it up, but still gives me access to other windows if I do, if I, move things around and I can find things. So I believe this is what you are looking for.
Yes.
And you just couldn't get to it because you were in full screen mode.
Okay, so sure. Thank you. Because I was with Ariel, so I kind of have to do everything. Thank you, Max.
Yep, no problem.
Yeah.
And the last thing I'll say is once you get it all going here, you can just click on this little go live button here. Oh no, you're in the wrong folder. So I'm going to open folder. I'm going to make sure that we're in the D3 folder and hit open. Now that we're in the folder itself and not just in the file, we can hit go live down here, and that's going to pop you open. So whatever you type in here, like the word test, will show up over here.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Max. Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Yeah.
Patrick, go ahead. I cannot hear you. You are unmuted though, so I think it's your headset. Still nothing.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Now I can.
Okay, mute you.
Hold on, let me.
All right, so I have like this box, or I don't know what I did.
Okay, share your
Like
screen. Let's take a look.
box around
The
me.
issue is that the red is highlighting both boxes all the way down into the bottom, and it's highlighting each individually.
Yeah, okay, now do you see it? Okay, so when I go down here and I open up my grid page, this is what pops up. So I'm not sure what I did.
Well, isn't that special? I'm not sure what you did either. Hit the refresh button for me.
Huh?
Hit the refresh button for me.
Yep.
Is it the double file issue again?
No, I don't have a double file.
So I'm gonna let me request remote control. Okay, so did you get something? Oh no, you're good. So the better way of opening this, instead of going in and double clicking on the file, it's better to go down here and hit the go live button, because that's what's going to give you the live version of your code. I am still immensely confused as to why you're having that problem.
Look, the code is identical.
So, here's your problem. It is not identical. This is an opening div tag. Should be a closing div tag. Ooh.
Oh,
So you're
okay.
missing that slash there. And because you didn't have the slash, it thought that this was an opening div tag for this div down here. So it was putting it all in. This closing slash is what you needed to tell the browser, hey, this is the end of the red. Now we're going to make a new div down here that's going to be the blue. So because you didn't have that slash in here, it didn't realize that you were trying to say this is the end of the red. And now because of that, your red and blue are right on top of each other, so they look like they're purple, but this is what mine looks like.
Okay, awesome. It was only that one mistake, so.
Yep, that one slash will get you. So, but that's a good debugging thing, right? Of like, hey, my blue is part of my red. That isn't right. Maybe I need to go check where I'm telling it the red is over to make sure that it's actually getting that properly.
Okay.
Schneider, go ahead.
Your VS Code for the live share is saying that you gotta increase your participant limit.
Mine is saying the same thing.
Did not know that was a thing. Can you
Me
tell this
neither.
is our biggest
Ariel mentioned it earlier too, I think.
I love that they tell all of you that I need to increase my participant limit, but do not tell me I need to increase my participant limit. And then they give me no easy way for me to do that. Do they have a link in there of how I can do that?
Yeah,
It just says to let you know.
Yeah, the only option I got is an OK button.
It says it's set at 5, if that helps.
Okay.
Apparently it has something to do with the preferences. Googling is a big help.
Yeah, I've got to modify. Apparently 30 is a limit, but I've got to set something to experimental and
Yeah, I see it on GitHub. And I'm like, I don't know what this means, but whatever.
all right. Has everyone been able to get into my live share?
I was able to get in and then I lost it and then I wasn't able to get back in. I'm going to try again now.
Okay. I set it to insiders. I'm probably going to have to reboot my VS Code in order for that to affect.
Yeah, I think mine disappeared as well. I had it, but I don't have it anymore.
Okay. I think that should be fixed tomorrow. I don't want to quit out of it because if I quit out of it and relaunch it, it's gonna kick everyone out. Live share.features. No. Live share.features. Experimental. There we go. All right, that should probably take effect during tomorrow's class. Sorry about that. I did not know that that was even a thing. All right, because Elle, go ahead with your question.
Okay, so if I go, hold on, let me share my screen real quick and then, okay. Can you see this code?
Yes.
It looks like it looks good to me. I studied it and it just comes up with, can you see this screen now?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so go back to your code for me. The problem is that you've got a closing arrow right here, and so you're saying the div tag is done. Same for this one right here. So if you take out those closing arrows,
Oh, yeah, because it's not done. Okay.
yep, and go ahead and save that and see what it looks like.
Okay.
You're good to go.
Thank you.
No problem.
What theme was your VS Code in? Ellie?
L.
Oh,
L?
oh, I
Or do
did
you prefer
send it.
Ellie?
Alondra, Ellie, they all work. Hold on. Or Lonnie, that works too. So I just put in pink. What is it?
That theme just
Oh,
looked
yeah, this one.
Right.
It's dope, right?
right.
Oh, it's a sneak of that color. All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I know everyone was still working on this, so let's extend break until 7:35 to give everyone a chance if you were still waiting, and then we'll group back together. I will see you guys at 7:35.
For anyone still here, I'm gonna play some relaxing music because this is stressing me out, and at least a couple others of you.
Order for it to affect everyone else. So if you're getting booted out of the live share, that should be fixed tomorrow. But let me know if it isn't, and I will dive into those settings before. I've never had 15 students be on the live share at the same time, let alone 20. So that is a limit that we found out about the hard way. Okay, so this is where we left off. And we've got our red and our blue borders right on top of each other, right? But what if we want a little space in between those two? We can use this property called margin, and that will allow us to kind of space those two borders out. So what I can do is I can say on my blue box, I'm going to add a new property in here that says margin, and I can apply my margin in all different kinds of places. If I don't specify anything and say something like 25px, it's going to apply it all around my div. So if we look in here, I've got margin on the left, I've got margin on the top, I've got margin on the right, and I've got margin on the bottom now. Well, I don't want all of that margin. I just want margin on the top. So I'm able to come in here and say dash top, and now I've got my margin only showing on the top. Okay, that's great, but what if I want some space between that blue line and the content itself? Well, that is getting into what we call the box model. So in order to get that spacing inside the box, instead of using margin, I'm going to use padding. And just like margin, I can say top, left, right, bottom to choose where that padding gets applied. But over here, now you can see I've got padding inside of my border box, plus my margin on top of it. So if you take a look at our outline, you'll see that I've got a link to the box model here. If I pop open that box model, you'll see a visual of how this all works. Our content is going to go inside of everything. Then our padding gets applied. Then our border gets applied. And then our margin. So if we want to just move things down on the page or give them some breathing room, we're going to use margin. But we're going to use padding whenever we want additional space inside of our box, inside of our border, and then we're going to use margin when we want that space applied to the outside of the border. Make sense? Okay. So another thing that I want to just touch on briefly, normally we don't use height and width properties on anything other than images, because what the browser is going to do is it's going to calculate how much space it needs for the margin, for the padding, for the border, and for the content itself. And it's going to figure out all of the width and the padding, the width and the height for us. But sometimes we want to override that. We want to say, hey, I know that this box only needs to take up a certain number of pixels, but I actually want that box to be a little bit bigger for whatever reason. Well, we can do that with both a height and a width property in our CSS. So we can say our height is going to say, let's make it up to 100 pixels. And you'll see our box just got a little bit bigger. And we can do the same with our width. We can say our width is going to be 300 pixels. And now that pulls it into a limit of 300 pixels. That's going to be helpful while you're working on this weekend's homework. Mainly the height component. The width component we use even less frequently because we often want our width to be automatically calculated by the browser. One other thing I want to touch on is, hey, we've got, a sentence here. And what if we want to target just this word and? Well, that's going to we're going to run into problems if we put this in another div, which is valid HTML. Now our and is on another sentence or another line. It's on that because divs by default span all the way out to 100% width. And we don't want that, right? We want to be able to target our word and without having it go onto another line. So you don't have to follow along with me on this, but the way we do that is we use what is called a span. That span is an inline element. In other words, it won't affect anything else. It won't push it down. It's almost as if that span isn't there. But what that span allows us to do is to add on a class or an ID. So an ID is just like a class, except you're only supposed to use it once. So when we have an ID, we can put an ID on this and say something like bold and. And keep in mind, this is going to be case sensitive. So if I do a capital A here, I need to do a capital A up in my style sheet. Okay, but I'm using an ID. We know how to write a selector for an HTML element. We know how to write a selector for a class by using a period. For IDs, we are going to use a pound sign or a hashtag and say bold and then we get to do whatever we want with this. So we can say font weight is going to be bold, and now my word and is bolded. Okay. More important than getting this code running, can you read from the top of this code all the way down to the bottom and know what every symbol and every letter is doing? If you can't, take a minute, go through it, make sure that you understand what this code is doing, because it's often more important that we can read back our code in English and articulate what it's doing than the code actually running. In terms of order and importance, it's much more important to be able to read this code and articulate what this code is doing. So just give it a brief read through. When you are done, give me a thumbs up in the Zoom reaction. When you are, if you have any questions, just raise your hand in Zoom and I'll call on you. Schneider, go ahead.
So, whatchamacallit, the bold and, does that act like to just, is it like the EM thing or are those two different things? Because on my end, like how I'm seeing it, it's just like, I don't know, like, I don't even know what the verbiage is, but like, I'm just a little confused, I guess. Like the code works on mine or whatever. I just don't really understand the use of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so I'm just looking up. So EM is definitely something you can use for bolding your text. But this kind of opens up the opportunity for us to apply any CSS that we want to this. So if we wanted to and say like, oh, and the color of that text is going to be red, we can now make that red. It's basically a way for us to put in a HTML element without it affecting the inline nature of it.
And that's because we made it an ID.
That's because we made it a span. The difference
Oh,
between
span.
an ID and a span is that we're allowed to reuse our classes. We aren't allowed to reuse an ID. So if
Okay.
we wanted another red box down here, we could just say div class equals red and say another red box. And that would show up here without any problem. But whenever we use an ID, we aren't supposed to reuse it. The browser isn't going to yell at you. The browser will let you reuse it. But the idea of an ID is that is an identifier. It is unique. It is not supposed to be reused. And if you do reuse it, it will be considered invalid HTML.
Okay, I hear you.
Brandon, go ahead.
So as far as I can see, I have the code as you do, but after font weight, it's still in white text and then the colon after has a red underline.
Okay, so make
and
sure you've
it's not
got
applying.
a dash here. Make sure you've got a colon and not a semicolon here.
Yeah.
And make sure you've got a semicolon at the end.
Okay. Yeah, I even retyped it and it's still doing the same thing. Do you want me to
Okay.
share my screen?
You have a opening curly brace here and a closing curly brace down here.
It's not curly, that's it.
There you go. Yeah, so oftentimes when we get a red squiggle, and this is a good note for everyone, you think, oh, red squiggle, that means that word is spelled wrong or the problem is there. Oftentimes the problem isn't there, it's the one line above it. And because the one line above it is wrong, it isn't expecting that next line where that squiggle is. Alba, go ahead.
I kind of looked at the homework. Are you gonna go over and how to do
We're
box
going into
next to
grid
each other?
next. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, when I do the homework, I make sure that we touch on all of the concepts. So sometimes you won't know how to do the homework until Thursday, at the end of Thursday's class, and that's okay and normal. Jordan, go ahead.
When you were asking what this code does, hold on just a moment. Babe, do you mind muting yours? Thank you.
Oh, you got to mute your speakers, Patrick.
Just the mute button up top, babe. F10. Okay, so when you were asking what does this code do you mean what does lines 1 through 26 try to convey to us?
Yes. Well, more importantly, what are we telling the computer to do in lines 1 through 26?
Are we trying to quantify and give value to the language that we're inputting? Like virtually, like give it a virtual value as opposed to like.
It's more like, can you read this code and explain to a non-programmer what this code is trying to do?
Are we just trying to like set a layout for a page? Like, is it trying to set a layout? Is that what you mean?
No,
sorry.
so like go through line by line, right? And say, okay, the HTML tag is important because it's telling the browser, hey, any of the code coming in between these two tags is going to be HTML code.
Okay.
Now we use this head tag, right? The head tag is telling the browser, hey, any information coming in here is for you. It's not necessarily to show it to the user. It's more so that you can set up this page right. Now we use a title tag. We use the title tag to specify the name of the tab in the browser, and we put the content of that what we want to show up between the opening tag and the closing tag. The importance of a closing tag, that slash at the beginning, is telling the computer, hey, we're done with the title now. Whatever comes next is no longer part of the title. Then we go into our style tag. This is telling the browser CSS is headed your way. Why it's not a CSS tag, I cannot tell you, but the style tag comes here. Okay, now we say, hey, this is going to apply to anything with red, but that period is telling the browser that that is a class. So wherever we see a class equals, that is going to be selected in our CSS, and the properties between these two curly braces are what is going to be applied to those classes. Same thing for blue. We know it's a class because it's a period that's going to apply to anything else going on down here. And then you can kind of go through that explanation all the way through to the end, right? So the idea is that, yeah, it's you guys are coding along, right? You're typing it out, but for homework, you're going to literally start from scratch, right? You're going to be like, oh, I need to do my page setup again. What's the page require? Oh, it's got HTML and a head tag and a body tag. Let me get all of those done. Okay, I've got all of these things that need to show up on the screen. I'm going to need to put them in divs. So let me start making my divs, right? We're about to go into the grid system next, which is how we can kind of lay things out and get things next to each other. We'll get into that in a second. But if at any point you get to the end of class or towards the end of class and you're like, I wrote that line of code, it's doing what it's supposed to be doing, but I don't understand what it's supposed to be doing or why we wrote it that way, that's when you can take a minute and just raise your hand and be like, hey, you use the pound sign there. I don't know what that pound sign is doing. Something like that.
Okay.
I know it's new. I know this is only day 2 for some of you of writing HTML. That's okay. It does become more familiar, but the end goal here is not to just get it working in the browser. The end goal is making sure that you understand why we're writing that code and what impact it has on the computer. Tika, go ahead.
Where is, I think I need to share screen, but I just need to get my window with the output on. I
Okay.
have all the code in. Let me share screen.
Go for it.
You cannot start share.
Oh, just hit OK and try again.
Okay. I just have the code. Let me exit full screen too.
So down, you can hit Command S to save.
Command S.
And if you go down to your dock, put your mouse all the way down at the bottom and click on either Chrome, it looks like Chrome is what you're using. So that's kind of in the middle.
Yeah, Chrome.
And then go ahead and click on that.
Okay.
And it doesn't look like you still have it open. So a little trick for that is if you go back into VS Code, excuse me, and click on the little do not enter sign down at the bottom where it says port 5500. And then click on click on go live again in the bottom right. There you go. Now it will reopen that tab for you and bring up your code.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions?
Can you go over the span thing again, please? I'm just writing it down in my notes as you talk, because yeah, that thing's kicking my butt.
Okay, so we use a span tag whenever we need to target a portion of our content. So we put a span in the middle of a div or a p tag or anything else so that we can target a specific section of the content. So with span tags, we can use spans, we can use IDs, or we can use classes, or we can use both. So if we wanted to, we could even put a class on this that says red, and now I will have a red border around my my word, around my span. So the span tag is just like a div in that it divides off our content. The only difference is that we'll use a span tag in the middle of a sentence, what we call an inline element. And because we are putting the word and inside of it, it knows the span is now part, the word and is part of the span. And now that we've got the span, we can put a class and an ID or either or onto that.
Okay, it's one of those things where I just have to practice it.
Can I add something? And I think this might help explain spans. And of
Go
course,
for it.
Max, correct me if I'm not explaining it right. And I'm sure we'll learn as we get further on. A lot of these elements, like a p tag or like an image tag, if I'm not mistaken, Max, when you use them, unless you alter them like to not do so, they each time you use them, they kind of start on a new line, right? So like if you wanted two things like next to each other, if you wanted to do two things to something that are in the same line, like unless you specified it, it would just start a new line. So a span is a great way to like add an element to something without like altering the structure of that thing. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? You know, a lot of the other things that you use, like for instance, you did, like you used emphasis, and like that's something that, you know, that's a good example of something that's used in line. But a lot of the other things like Max mentioned, like a div or like a p tag, if you were to use two of those in the same line on in HTML on the website, they would show like on top of each other. They wouldn't show next to each other.
Yeah, so if
So
I
again,
use a div here, it's pushing it down onto this next line, right? And I'm like, well, I don't want it on the next line. I just want and to show up in red with a box around it. So that's why we use that span, because it's in line. And now it will let me target it will let me select just that one little word that I want, instead of having a whole nother div, which is going to break it up, or another p tag or anything like that. Brian, you're totally spot on with that definition.
And one more thing I'll add, just to say, like a lot of the, like a thing like a span, as we get further along and we start having to place like things in a very specific place on the website, like, yeah, you'll find it useful to have elements that don't alter things that you've already put somewhere, you know?
Thanks for your input. That was helpful. And thank you as well, Max.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so we're going to keep going here. We are going to be using a framework called Bootstrap. Bootstrap is a way that is basically a bunch of CSS that someone has already written for us. That CSS includes a bunch of different classes for us that we are able to use on our own in our HTML without having to write the CSS for it. In order to do that, though, we've got to tell our HTML, heads up, we would like to have Bootstrap included into this page. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into our web browser, go ahead and open a new tab, and we're going to go to getbootstrap.com. Right up at the top here, if you're not on the page, if you did a Google search for it, it's going to be the first link. And Bootstrap is actually, or was originally made by Twitter, because Twitter said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we could have this one file of CSS and then just use it on all of our different pages without having to rewrite all of this CSS over and over again. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up to the docs in the top left. And then we're going to scroll down just a little bit to this link line. This link line, we've got to pull all the way over, right? So I'm on getbootstrap.com. I clicked on docs. I'm in introduction. I scroll down a little bit until I see this link tag right here. Jennifer, go ahead. You have a question, Jennifer?
There we go. I didn't see where you clicked to get to this point.
Okay, so sometimes it's more important to listen than it is to watch, right? Getbootstrap.com. I click on the link to get to that website. I click on docs, and then I click on introduction.
Okay, I couldn't see my whole screen. That's why. Okay.
Okay, so now we are down under number 2. There is a link tag here that says https jsdeliver.net, yada, yada, yada. We're going to copy that line, and you got to make sure you scroll all the way over to the end of the line. The end of the line should say cross origin equals anonymous. You're going to go ahead and copy that whole big thing. I'm not a fan of copying code. This is one time. Would not expect you to be able to type all of this in. We're going to go over to our VS Code, and in our grid.html, before our style tag, but after the title tag, we're going to hit enter, and then we're going to hit Command V to paste it. If we scroll all the way back over, we should see our title, our link, and our style. If I go ahead and save that, go back to my browser and pop open the grid page, you'll notice our font changed. Make sure that you've saved your file here. You don't have a dot, you have the X at the top. Go ahead and save that file. And if you have a font change, you are all caught up. If you don't have a font change, go ahead and raise your hand and I can help you there. I'm going to start a poll to make sure everyone is able to get that font changed. So it shouldn't be in Times New Roman. It should be in Arial. Please, please, please never, ever, ever use the I'm lost option. If you're lost, just raise your hand. I don't know who's lost. So as an instructor, think about it from my perspective a little bit. I want to make sure all of you guys get this. If you say I'm lost, I have no idea who's lost. So that's why we want to raise our hand instead. Agonza, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So hold on, give me 1 second. Okay. So under title, I have link href =, and then the entire, yep, I see what I did wrong. Just kidding.
Yeah, you
I
want to
think
be
typing
careful.
it out helps.
Yeah, and that's the rubber ducking, right? Okay, let me just articulate my problem here. Let me go through this all one more time, and then rubber ducking is very common.
Should it be should my hello world be highlighted like yours is, or is this something different?
Yeah, I just had that highlighted.
Okay.
So you should just see that it's in a slightly different font. Everything just looks like a little bit cleaner, a little bit nicer. That's what Bootstrap is doing for us.
Okay. Okay. I think, okay.
Anyone else need help? Or Charles, go ahead.
Yeah, I can't tell the difference.
Okay, share your screen.
All right.
Okay, you're good to go. That is the new font.
Okay.
Anyone else need help? Okay, we're going to keep going. Oh, Jordan, go ahead.
Okay, so now looking at mine, I think I just got the font changed, but for some reason, another red box is not in another red box.
Share your screen.
Okay. This.
Scroll down for me. Oh, I'm sorry. Your word, go back down to the bottom. Your word red is not inside of the quotes.
Oh, that'll do it.
And you should be all set there.
Nice, thank you.
No problem. Anyone else?
Am I done?
I bumped you.
Okay, cool. Sorry.
The power of admin. I can just stop your screen share and mute you guys. Lower your hands too. I feel like such a bad teacher sometimes. When you leave your hands up, I just go around. Lower hand, lower hand.
Can I get the Bootstrap link again?
Yeah, so it's gonna be getbootstrap.com, or just do a search for Get Bootstrap. Go to Docs, go over to Introduction, scroll down to the number 2, and the link tag. You want to copy that all the way over. Hit copy on that. Go back over to your VS Code between the title and the style. Put a new line. Go ahead and hit Command V, and that will paste it in. And then in your grid page, you should see this change from Times New Roman to Arial. Brandon, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks.
Yep.
I was just gonna ask you to I think I missed a part where you added the other red box.
That's fine. You don't have to worry about it.
Okay, I was just, yeah. I was like,
We're
wait, what's going on?
We're gonna go over commenting out in 1 second. So I've got a little bit more content that we've got to get over for tonight. So we are going to go over commenting out code. Commenting out code is a way that you can literally leave comments in your code that are helpful for you down the line. So in order to comment code, you're going to do an arrow, an exclamation point, dash, dash, and you notice each Visual Studio Code put in the closing dash, dash in the arrow for us. This is a comment in HTML only. Every language has its own comment syntax in it. In JavaScript, when we get to it, it's // instead of arrow, exclamation point, dash, dash. We can leave a little note in here like the box below is red. Now we come over to the browser, nothing has changed. Because it is a comment, it is a way for you to leave notes in your code without the computer actually making that show up. So you could put whatever you wanted in here and it wouldn't show up. However, a very common use for commenting out code is when you don't want the computer to show something. Let's say, just hypothetically, we don't want this blue box to show up or this red box. We are able to put in our opening comment and our closing comment. And now you'll notice our red box has disappeared. So that's a way we're kind of telling the computer, ignore this code, right? Ignore whatever is coming between this right here and this right here. Now that is used so commonly that there is a shortcut built into VS Code for not only commenting code, but also uncommenting code. So if we put our cursor anywhere on this line, we can hit Command/, and you'll notice it removes our comments for us. And if we hit Command/ again, it's going to drop in our comments. And that works not only for one line of code, but we can highlight a couple lines of code and hit Command/, and it will comment all of those lines out for us. And if we want to undo that, we hit Command/ again, and it brings it back. because we are going to be working with the grid system next, I'm actually going to comment out all of those lines of code. So when I hit save, we will get the equivalent of an entirely blank page in the browser. All of that code is still here, but these comments are telling the browser to ignore it.
Hmm.
Good?
Yes.
Okay. So now we get to work with our grid system. Now the grid system is interesting because it's broken up into 12 columns. Can anyone think of why it's broken up into 12 instead of broken up into 10?
An even number?
It's kind of for that even number. It's so that if we
You have
want
the
to
equal spaces?
equal spacing, right? So if we want to break something into thirds, we can't divide 10 by 3 and not have a remainder left over. So the reason we use 12 is it's more easily divisible by a larger set of numbers. So what we're going to get started with is whenever we use the grid system, we want to keep everything in what is called a container. That container class is getting provided to us by Bootstrap. So we're going to start with a div class equals container. Now, inside our container, and this is what we get into what they call div soup, because we get lots of divs nested in other divs. We can't use a column unless we put that column inside of a row. So we are going to do a div class equals row. And now we still don't have anything showing up. So now we get to use our div class column. And we want that column to take up 50% of the screen. So we are going to say col-6, because again, this is all out of 12. So if we want something to take up half of the columns, we take 12, we divide it by 2, that gives us our 6, and we use our col-6. It is so critical that we've got these divs nested properly and our closing divs as well. That will be much easier if you make sure your indentation is right. So we can easily tell this div closes this div right here because they're on the same level of indentation. If they're not, put your cursor in the right spot and either hit tab or delete to move it to the right place. We also have our div here that lines up with our closing div here. So we know that this div is the closing div for this div. So I'm going to put the word column1 in here. And then I'm going to go down to the end of this div, the end of our col-6. I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to create a new div called col2. Now I come over to my browser. Oh, and I remember to put a class on this of col6 as well. Now I come over to my browser, and this is over on the left, and this is over on the right. Okay, cool, but I can't really see where those divs are. I don't really understand that. So what I can do is, in addition to my col6, I can use another class called red. Where's that red coming from? Hey, look, I still got my border up here. I can use that class to see where my columns are. So we're going to take a break in 1 second. We've got this left and right showing up. What would I need to adjust it so this takes up 25% of the screen and this takes up 75% of the screen? How would I go about doing that? Does anyone have any ideas?
Would you set a width and height or no?
No, so we're going to lean into our grid system here, right? So everything's based off of that number 12. So if I want this column to be a little bit smaller, I can set this down to a 4. But now everything always has to add up to 12, because if we look at this, now this column needs to get a little bit bigger. It's not all the way at the width of our screen. So the way we do that is we say, okay, 12 minus 4 gives me 8. So we come down here, adjust this to an 8, and now this column is taking up 75% of the screen, and this column is taking up 25% of the screen. So we're going to pause here. Again, if you're lost, if you need help, go ahead and raise your hand. If you're still catching up on the code, that's totally fine. I'm going to copy and paste this into Slack because I know the live share isn't working great. So if you need to reference that code, I just put it in the live stream channel. If you need help, raise your hand. If you're still working on it, don't vote in the poll yet. That gives me an idea of how much time you guys need to catch up.
Do you still want us to do the homework before class tomorrow, or are
The
we?
quiz, not the homework.
The quiz, okay.
Hey, Max, could you please just scroll down so we could see your web page?
Oh,
I want to
over
just
here.
compare mine. I can see where I've got the columns 1 and 2 and that they match up to yours.
Okay, so then you should be all caught up.
Am I supposed to have the word container above it?
No. So go to your code and make sure you've got container inside of the quotes and that your opening and closing arrows are in the right place.
Container div class. Okay, so your columns are right under the another red box, correct?
The only two things on the screen are two red boxes.
Oh, because you, yeah.
I commented
all
out
those
the code
comments.
above it. Yes.
Okay.
Don't forget to vote in the poll if you've got it working, or raise your hand if you need help.
So just so I have this correct, so the column 4 is pretty much telling you kind of like the width of the column.
That is exactly what it's doing. So it's saying it is 4 out of 12 wide.
Okay. Cool. Now I understand.
So we get to take this another step further. We can say, hey, if I want another row, where does that last row end? I've got to figure that out. This div, this closing div is closing this div up here. This div is closed by this div right here. So that must mean that this div right here is closing this div for the row. So if I want another row to show up, I need to put my cursor after this div because this is the one that's saying the row is over, but still inside of my container div. So you notice if I hit enter here, and I've been good on my indentation, when I do another div class row here, this div is lining up with this opening row div and this closing one, which makes it much easier for me to know, hey, I am in a new row here, but I am still inside of this container because I'm indented a level over. So now we can get fancy. What if we want 3 columns? Well, we can do another div class here. And now we need to say, well, if I've got 3 columns, I'm going to take 12 and divide it by 3, and that gives me 4. So I can say, oh, I would like a col 4 here, and I'm going to say first col. Now I want another column. I need to make sure I'm at the right spot here. So I come down and I say this div is closing this div, but I'm still within my row. So I'm going to put my cursor at the end of this div, do a new div class col 4. Oops. Now I didn't screw up all my indentation. I can put my second column here, and I can copy that whole div. Although if you're still getting familiar with the syntax, feel free to type it all out manually and put in my third column. Now, that appears to have worked, but I can't really know. So maybe instead of using a border, we'll come up to our style and say, let's do a new class called BG for background, and we can put a background of blue. Let's call this BG blue. And we can add a BG red. So we can tell them apart. So we come down to the bottom, and in our col, we do our BG blue, we do our BG red, and we do our BG blue again, and we can see where our columns are. And you'll notice that this is responsive as well. So if we drag this page out, our columns get bigger, and if we shrink them down, they get smaller. And you also will notice, hey, there's a little white space on the edge here. That's kind of nice. It kind of gives our page breathing room. But when we pull everything back in together, when the window gets small enough, it says, hey, we don't have enough white space room there, right? That is all coming from our container. Our container is adding that little margin on the left and right side for us. So because this changes when we go up to a different size, that is called responsive. So we are learning that Bootstrap is doing all kinds of magic for us. It's an HTML framework because we're able to add classes to our HTML. It's a CSS framework, mostly a CSS framework, because all of these things, this col8, this row, this container, all of that is defined for us. We know it's responsive because we can open it and close it. And it is a front-end library because we're using it in the front end. We're using it in our browser. So all different kinds of things that Bootstrap is doing for us in here. Now, the last thing I'm going to show you guys before we get into terms and wrap it up for this evening. Max, it's great that we're learning all about this Bootstrap and the container's cool and the row is cool and all of that stuff. How am I ever supposed to know what all of these classes are? How am I ever going to remember all of this? You don't have to. Just like we have W3 schools and MDN, Bootstrap, as any other framework, has documentation. So if we go back to the Bootstrap page that we got the link from, over on the left-hand side here under the docs, we can scroll down, and under the layout section, it's going to have the grid. We pop open the grid, and what it's going to do is show us example code. Hey, that code looks just like the code that we wrote. And if you scroll down, you can see all kinds of documentation in terms of using the column, the different sizes of the columns for different screen sizes. We're going to get into that a little bit later, but we can do equal width columns. There's all kinds of information in here. Don't worry, the grid system is very powerful, and we're just scratching the surface here. So the only thing that I want you guys to understand is the grid is always based off of 12. We have 12 columns in a row, and the number that comes after the col is going to adjust the sizing. So if I wanted a column to be a quarter of the screen, the middle column to be half of the screen, and the right column to be another quarter of the screen, we would adjust this to be 3, 6, and 3. So when we save that, now our grid, this is a quarter of the screen, this is half of the screen width, and this is the other quarter of our screen width. That was a lot. I know it's 8:30. The grid system is a tough thing to get this late at night. We're going to get more practice with this tomorrow. Tomorrow, we dive into the weather app, and we start learning about how to actually build a real site. If you guys are struggling with all these divs, if things are not showing up in the right place, it is very important to make sure our div is done. And before we open a new one, we really want to make sure that we're at the right spot. So sometimes it's helpful to come in here and leave a comment. And the comment you can leave is end of col1 div. And then you can copy that and paste it and say end of col2 div. If that's helpful for you, you can keep going on any of your closing tags. You can say end of first row. And you can keep leaving these notes in your code to make it easier to understand, hey, this is the end of the row 2 col1 div. And this is the end of our second row div. That's totally optional. But if that helps you identify, hey, where are we putting all of this code? Because eventually we'll get to the point of using columns inside columns. So we get to nest all of this stuff down, and it gets really confusing. So if leaving these comments in there are helpful for you, you can put notes in like that. Any questions about this code?
Can you put that into Slack?
Sure can. I'm going to just modify the one that's already in there. So that is now up to date in Slack. And don't be afraid to ask for that, especially at the end of class, because I totally will forget. So don't definitely remind me of that. Okay, I know we only have 1 minute left, but I want to get the terms captured tonight. Is there any terms that popped up tonight that we would like to define so we have them captured? Don't all go at once.
Sorting through the divs.
So, margin. The difference between margin and padding. That would help a lot. And the different types of divs.
So we'll say div, we'll say span, say class and ID.
Add comments.
And maybe what we need before we put like what not abbreviation. So you said for ID we need a dot.
Yep.
So what we would need in order to represent that?
I'll define the rest of these later and we'll go over it tomorrow. Any other terms that popped up that we want to get on this list?
Container.
Container? Any other words? Okie doke.
And add the grid system itself.
Sure. Okay. That is all I have for you guys for class tonight. Believe it or not, you have everything you need to not only take the quiz, which is due tomorrow before class, but you also have everything you need to do the weekend homework assignment. But I do not want you guys to panic and looking at that assignment and go, oh, I need more practice on this. Because tomorrow we're going to get more practice with the grid system. We're going to get more practice with our divs and our containers and CSS selectors and all of that stuff. So tomorrow we're going to dive into building this little weather app. And we're going to go a little quick because we've got to get the whole thing in tomorrow. We're going to build this whole entire thing tomorrow.
Is that utilizing the columns we just learned?
We will be utilizing the columns, yes.
Okay.
So we'll go through the exercise of what we call reverse wireframing, where we break this down visually into rows and columns before we start coding things out. Once we're able to have that visual done, it makes it much easier to break our code down into our containers, our rows, and our columns and get the right content showing up. So this is kind of the amalgamation of everything that you've learned so far, because we're going to be using CSS. We're going to be using properties and selectors. We're going to be using divs. We're going to be using all kinds of information in there. I know I went a couple minutes over, so I will let you guys go. With that said, if you are stuck on your columns, you don't need to turn that in. If you don't have it working, it's not the end of the world. That code will never go anywhere. You don't have to turn it in. It's okay to not have it working. But if you really want to understand it, or you're really stuck somewhere and you want to push through, I'm happy to stay on for the next couple minutes and help you guys through that. Otherwise, have an awesome evening. I will see you guys tomorrow. Don't forget to take the quiz. And don't feel like you have to stay on just because everyone else is staying on. Jordan, go for it.
Okay, so mine, first of all, one of the first problems I was having was right here at the background red. I don't know what I did wrong.
Yeah, so oftentimes the problem isn't the line where the squiggly is, it's the line above where the squiggly is.
Okay.
So look at that code. I'm not going to give you the answer. What is missing on your BG blue that you have on your bold ant? Nope.
No?
Nope, you have it right because BG Blue is a class. I mean, between here and here, what do you not have that you have between here and here?
The ending curly cues.
You got it. And whenever you add that closing one, which you can go ahead and do.
It's not letting me.
Oh, sorry. When I draw on the screen, sometimes it locks your cursor out. Now we want to be careful because we've got an extra one hanging out down here.
So just get rid of that one, right?
There you go.
Also, how do I get rid of this line? No, that's not.
Just keep it and delete until it gets
No,
your cursor back up.
Still not let me move it.
Oh, click into the screen again.
Oh, there we go. Okay, so down here. When I finish this, I feel like I'm missing at least 2 lines of closers.
Yep.
But how
So-
do I tell which one that I'm missing?
So let's get our indentation fixed right. So let me just request remote control. Okay, so we know this div is right here, but this div is closing out that div, right? So it's always better to work the most nested level in outwards. So this is
Okay.
our most nested level of div. So this div is closing this div.
Okay,
Now we look at this column. This column is still part of this row. It is brethren of this and this, right? So we want
Yes.
to indent this over as well. So, okay, now it becomes much easier because we say this div is closed right here.
Yep.
We don't want it closed there because
No.
we want third col to be part of that div.
Yeah.
So we're going to just delete this out.
Delete that and then post it underneath it.
Now we can pull that over. This div is closing out this div here. And we know that because if we click on it, see how the other one is kind of highlighted for us?
Yes.
Now we're at the point where, okay, we can just go on a closing spree. So we come down here and we go, we don't want anything else in this row. So if we hit Shift Tab, it's going to unindent us and we can close out that div. Now we go enter and we go, well, I can Shift Tab again. And that means we must need one more closing div as well.
Okay.
And now if you count, I've got 1, 2, 3 closing divs, and then my body and my HTML. I've got 1, 2, 3 closing divs, my body and my HTML. But it's much easier to figure out which ones we need to close because we cleaned up our indentation up here.
Okay.
And if you want to save and get the satisfaction, you can switch over to your browser and see if it's working. You're good to go.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I know it's tough coding along with me live. But it's very important to like take a moment, take a step back and say, is this div in the right spot? Right?
Literally,
Because
the only time that it was difficult was when you shot up to background and then shot back down. I was like, oh snap. Like I got lost like right there the only time. So
it does get better. I'm following along is a skill that you develop.
okay, so thank you very much, and you have a wonderful night. I'm gonna go take the quiz.
You too. I'll see ya. Oh, and reminder, the quiz is open book. So feel free to use any outlines. Feel free to Google. Yeah. Okay, Kalai, go ahead.
Can you just put the code from yesterday? You didn't finish the end ones where we did the CSS. That was not in the Slack. So I checked last night. It was not there. So if you can put that one, I appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you.
Sure thing. That was week 2, day 2. I can copy that and say. And then I'm going to just move that so people don't get confused. Let me just copy this. here. Okay. Code is posted. Alba, you're up.
All right, so I got in between the divs, so I'm trying to fix it.
Sure.
Let me the screen. Okay, can you see my screen?
I can.
So I know this div goes to this div right here,
Okay.
but they're not lining up.
So we're gonna do the same thing that we did. We're gonna start the innermost and work our way out. So here we're gonna say this div is, so all of this is good, right? We have almost good. This is
Well,
got a
some
space in
some
it.
of them are like one right after the other, so they're fine, but there's like two of them that are like indented differently for some reason.
Okay, so here we are starting a new row of columns, right? We've got a col 8, a 4, and a 3. But before we start working with a new column, we need to put all of that into a row.
Okay.
So we hit enter there, then I take all of this and I put it into here. We'll tackle closing divs in a second. The other thing is this is all in white because you don't have your opening tag in there. Okay, now we can get to work here. This is properly indented. This is properly indented. Now this div is closing this div. So we move this over to make sure that that lines up. Now this column, there we go, lines up, is part of all of that row. So because it's on the same level as this 8, we hit delete here and we bring it over, and then we bring our closing div over as well. Then we take this col, we bring that over, we bring that closing div to there. Now we say, hey, this div is indented one level over, which means it must be closing this row up here. And this div is indented even further over. So if I click on it, I have it closing my container up here. So we're also good to go. Now, the only other problem is that we only have 12, the column grid is only 12 wide. So 8 plus 4 gets us to the 12, and then we get the 3. So this code is actually working, but it ran out of space. So because of that, it just kind of pushed it into the next row. So in order to fix that, we can just size this down and say 3, and let's make this one maybe a little bigger up to a 6, and you're good to go.
Okay.
Now, the only other thing that you have here is your BG blue, and that isn't working because you missed an E here, and this is a background, and now you're all caught up.
All right.
Good work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Max.
Have a good night. Brandon, go ahead.
Okay, almost there. I think I kind of had a similar problem. Let me share my screen. Oh, where am I? Wait. I'm sorry, where do I look to share screen again?
In the Zoom window down at the bottom, the green button in the center.
Staring me right in the face. Okay. Wait, where'd it go? Is this one line? It's not.
You're in the right spot. That's yours.
Okay. Oh, I just need to minimize Zoom. Okay. There we go.
Okay.
Okay.
So let me request remote control. Hit open system preferences, click the lock in the bottom left when it appears. It might be on your other monitor. Oh, that put you in the wrong spot. That's okay. Hit the little next to software update. It's got like the grid of icons right here.
Oh, hold on 1 second. Gotta. I'm lost.
Okay, so in your system preferences where it
Oh,
says
there we go.
software update.
Yeah.
Hit the grid right up here. I have it circled in red.
There we are.
And then security and privacy.
Security, privacy.
And then accessibility. And then click the lock here.
Oh.
And fingerprint or password, and then check that there. Okay, and now
Should be good. Or
I have Z control. Okay.
Okay.
So your div is here. You're very good on your indentation here. You're very good on your indentation here. That means this div should be closing out that div, and it is.
Okay.
So now we come in here. We've got our div. This should be on the same level as this because they are both this row and this row are children of this container.
Yep.
So we're good there, but we've got an opening div. That means anything after it should be indented a level. So we come in and we say, this should all be indented all the way down to that closing div. So if we highlight multiple lines and hit tab, it will indent them for us. It won't like overwrite it with one tab.
Good as like a group. Okay.
Now we want to be careful here. This first call is 2 levels of indent, 2 levels in instead of 1. So we bring that one back over with a delete key. And then here, call 6 and BG red are separate classes. So we hit a space to fix those out. Now it becomes much easier to say this div is closing this row here. Now we can say this div is closing this container here, because that's indented right. Now we don't have any other levels to go because body is also properly indented. So
Okay.
this must be an extra closing div tag.
Extra one. Okay.
So if we do all of that and save, look at what happens.
Okay. Yeah. I had a feeling I had an extra div somewhere, but I was just like, so I really need to make more use of those, the exclamation notes.
Yes, not a problem.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
And if those are something that like I've grown out of as a developer, I don't do that because like I'm so used to fixing indentation for people, I forget to add them. So if I'm coding during class and that's helpful for you, just be like, hey, Max, can you throw in the ending comment divs or the ending comment, whatever, and I can throw that in for you.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much.
Artrell, go ahead.
All right. I think I got my code to line up correctly. I'll share my screen. Nope, I don't want that one. I need to share screen. All right. Desktop 2. All right. So can you see my screen?
I can.
All right.
So
So that's my
Yep.
product.
You're good. You're all caught up. Your indentation is right. That is perfect. Perfect.
Yeah, I find I have to kind of like watch you first and then catch up after. Because if I start doing it while you're doing it, I find I'm missing things.
So share that at the beginning of class tomorrow during stand up, because
Okay.
no matter how many times I say you don't have to follow along here, or, you know, just wait until we catch up. That's okay, right? It is a skill to know, hey, I need to give you guys a break, let you guys catch up, but that break is coming, right? So keep that in mind, share that with class, and you may find that you'll help other students as well, knowing that they don't have to follow along.
Okay.
Good work. I'll see you tomorrow.
All right. Thank you.
Elle, go ahead.
Okay, so mine, I know it's something. Wait, well, let me do it. Okay. It looks messy, but when I go to the live, it's not lining up the columns right. Or is that? No, that's not right.
Okay,
And then
so-
I've got quotation mark in the top left-hand corner.
Okay, let's see if we can find that as we go. So I'm going to request remote control. Okay, so let's start. We've got our div up here at the top. Oh, can you hit open? Did it give you a pop-up that says open system preferences?
Yep, hold on, I gotta put my password on. Okay, now is it working?
You have to check after you hit the lock, you have to check off the zoom.
Yep, it's checked. Let me see if I can share, stop, and then I'll start doing it again. Let's try it again. Okay.
I gotta hit request.
But I already clicked yes. What is going on?
Can you pull the system preferences over to the monitor that you're sharing?
There we go. Okay. I didn't click the lock button again.
Oh,
Now do I have to go back and do it again? Okay, you got it.
yeah, I'm in. Okay. So our div is here. That's good. Now anything inside of it's indented a level. You've got the row here. That's good. We open a new one here. We're indented. But now we come down to
That was too
here.
far. Okay.
That's too far in, right? And then same here, our col 2. Now we've got a problem because we've got 4 and
There should
8
be a
is 12.
column
So
3. Oh no,
there-
that one can't be in there because it's over 12. Okay.
Correct. So we're going to take that out. And now we don't want to, okay, we got to be careful here. There's 2 things going on. We're done with this row, right? So what we want to do is we want to come out here and put this div in and say, okay, now that row is done.
Oh, okay.
N-
So you're going container, then row. Okay, I'm gonna have to write this
Now we
down
need
how
a
this
new
goes.
row here, but because
Yep.
it's a new row, we shouldn't have our closing div in there.
Okay, there's that.
So now we're inside the row, so we need to go another level deeper for this col. And
Okay.
then oh, I didn't mean to do that. Cancel. Okay, now inside this col, we indent 1 level. And now this div is closing out this div, so we go 1 level in.
Okay.
This col 4 is part of this row, so it needs to be indented at the same level that this col 4 is in. Same
Okay.
thing here and here. Now this closing div lines up with that. Now we come in and we do our final one. And now we get to see, okay, this div is the one that's closing this row, which means this div is the one that's closing this container. And
Okay.
then this body lines all the way up with the body up here. So when I save that, do you get what you want in your
Yeah.
browser?
Now I see how you got it. Okay, that's where I was lost, was like figuring out whether I had the shortcuts set up wrong and it wasn't like closing them for me. Okay, but you have to go back and do it yourself. All right.
Yeah, so it will help you on the indentation, but before I type anything, I always make sure my cursor is indented properly before I start doing the typing. And
Okay.
that's why, like, you don't see me going back and fixing indentation, because I'm doing it on the fly before I even start typing anything.
Okay.
So like, it's the little things, right? Of like, if I'm here and I do like my div and I close it, before I start putting anything, before I put col 3 in here or anything, I hit enter first.
Okay.
And now my indentation, you notice it's not only right on the closing, it's right on the inside of the div too.
Right, in line with column 2. Okay.
So it's those little things, right? Of like, you're following along with me and you see me type the div. And so you're tempted to start putting the content in there. And it's like, no, I have to enter and then it's going to do the indentation and then I can keep typing.
Okay. All right. So that looks good. And then as far as the notes, I think I got that. You can just pretty much the notes is just like anything.
Either anything, either
me,
any code
you-
that you want to disable or anything
No,
that you
what's-
want to leave for yourself.
Yeah, any notes you want to leave for yourself. Okay.
Yep, that's going to be this. And then it's
Right.
the same syntax to kind of disable the code. We call that commenting out the code.
Okay. All right, that looks good. All right. And then that quote, where's that one? I'm looking at the top near the head. I'm trying to see if that's where that one quotation mark is.
Oh, are you sure? Is it still there after we do all the formatting?
Yeah.
Um,
I'm wondering if it's where I grabbed the code from Bootstrap.
yep, it sure
Yeah,
is.
right there.
Good catch.
Beautiful. Oh, it does it in a live view too. Oh my goodness, this is great. All right, this looks perfect. Thank you so much.
No problem.
All right, have a good one.
You too. I'll see you guys. Archer, do you have anything else before I head out?
No, I was just looking to see what issues she had in case it kind of happens to me. You know what I
I
mean? 'Cause when you
totally
talk
get it.
about that, try to pay attention to that. So I was just following along in case I run into it. I have an idea. I know the columns are very important. That's how I was able to fix some of my other issues from before.
Cool. Awesome. We'll have an awesome evening. I'll see you tomorrow.
All right. Thanks, Max.